In 1988, Honda built a motorcycle so advanced, so utterly dominant, that it broke the sport it was created to win. It was, quite literally, a factory race bike with lights and mirrors. This is the Honda RC30, and it was too good for its own good. At its heart sat an exotic V4 engine, packed with titanium and technology from Honda's most expensive racer. It won everything, first time out. And in winning so completely, it triggered an arms race that would eventually destroy the very formula it perfected. The RC30 wasn't built to make money. It was built to win a world championship. Everything else, comfort, practicality, price, was sacrificed on the altar of one single goal. And Honda achieved that goal so emphatically, it stunned the entire motorcycling world. But its brilliance came at a cost. It was breathtakingly expensive. So expensive that it started a spiral of ever wilder, ever costlier machines, until the price of winning became almost impossible to justify. The RC30 was a victim of its own perfection. This is the story of the Honda RC30, how it became one of the greatest motorcycles ever built, dominated everything it touched, and in doing so, proved that sometimes a machine can simply be too good for its own success. To understand the RC30, you need to understand its purpose. In 1988, a brand new racing series was launched, the World Superbike Championship. Unlike Grand Prix, it was for machines based on road-going production motorcycles, and Honda desperately wanted to win it. Honda already had a weapon, the RVF750, a factory racer that dominated endurance racing and the Isle of Man. At the time, it was the most exotic, most expensive race bike on Earth, costing more to run than even Honda's Grand Prix machine. But World Superbike had a rule. To race a machine, you had to sell a version of it to the public. It's called homologation. Honda had to build a road-going bike that was, essentially, its factory racer and sell it to ordinary customers. Most manufacturers responded by mildly tuning an existing road bike. Honda did the opposite. They took their all-conquering RVF 750 racer, added lights and mirrors, and made that the road bike. It was a completely radical approach. The result was revealed at the Tokyo Motor Show in 1987, badged the VFR750R and codenamed RC30. Jaws hit the floor. This wasn't a tuned-up street bike. It was, near enough, the factory racer itself, made legal for the road. And it was built like one. Developed by HRC, Honda Racing Corporation, every RC30 was assembled by a small, dedicated team. This was not mass production. It was hand-built precision, on a level almost no road bike had ever seen. The engine was a masterpiece. A 748 cubic centimeters, 90-degree V4, water-cooled with 16 valves. But instead of chains, it used gear-driven camshafts, precise, reliable, and expensive. The sound of those gears whining became one of the RC30's signatures. Inside, it was pure racing exotica, titanium connecting rods, feather light and immensely strong, an 11-to-1 compression ratio, a close-firing order crankshaft for a distinctive power delivery. This was Formula One technology, in a bike you could ride to work. In full, unrestricted form, it produced around 112 to 118 horsepower at 11,000 revolutions per minute. For 1988, from a 750, that was serious power. But the RC30 was never really about outright horsepower. It was about the whole package. Because the chassis was just as advanced. A light, twin-spar aluminum frame wrapped around that V4. It was designed by racers for racing, rigid, precise, and beautifully balanced. The RC30 handled like nothing else on the road. Then there was the single-sided swing arm, the Pro Arm. It wasn't just for looks. Combined with quick-release axles, it let a race team change a rear wheel in seconds during an endurance pit stop. Every detail served the goal of winning. Even the front end was designed for the racetrack. A quick-release fork system for fast front-wheel changes. This was a road bike engineered, down to the last bolt, for the specific demands of endurance and superbike racing. Nothing was an afterthought. The specification read like a race bike's. Magnesium wheels, top-grade Showa suspension, Nissan brakes, exotic materials used everywhere. Honda spared no expense. The RC30 set a new benchmark that every single rival would now have to chase. And it was gorgeous. That twin round headlight face, borrowed from endurance racers, the solo seat, the purposeful muscular stance. The RC30 didn't just perform like a racer, it looked like one too. It was desire, made metal. But all this brilliance carried a shocking price. When the RC30 went on sale, it cost around $15,000 in America and about £8,500 in Britain. That was roughly double the price of any rival 750 sports bike. This was, by the standards of the time, an enormous amount of money for a production motorcycle. It instantly made the RC30 an object of extreme desire and extreme exclusivity. Only a lucky, wealthy few would ever own one, and they were rare by design. Honda built only enough to satisfy the homologation rules, somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 over the whole production run. The RC30 was never meant to be common. It was meant to be special, and it was. In fact, the RC30 achieved something almost unheard of. It became a collectible motorcycle before it was even publicly released. People understood, instantly, that this was a landmark machine, a future classic from the very moment it appeared. Then came the racing, and this is where the legend was truly forged. Honda hadn't built the RC30 to look pretty in showrooms. They'd built it to win. And in 1988, the very first year of World Superbike, it did exactly that. American rider Fred Merkle took the RC30 to victory in the inaugural World Superbike Championship, winning both the riders' and manufacturers' titles. The bike built to win the new series had done precisely that, right out of the gate. And then he did it again. In 1989, Merkle and the RC30 successfully defended the world title. Back-to-back championships in the first 2 years of the sport. The RC30 wasn't just competitive, it was the machine to beat, everywhere. Its dominance spread far beyond World Superbike. At the 1988 Isle of Man TT, the legendary Joey Dunlop rode the RC30 to victory in the Formula One race, at an average speed of over 116 miles per hour. It conquered the mountain too. In America, Miguel Duhamel won the Daytona 200 on an RC30 in 1991. It won national superbike titles. It dominated endurance racing. Wherever this machine went, it won. It was, simply, the most complete racing motorcycle of its era. And here's what made it truly special. Because it was a factory bike you could actually buy, privateers, independent racers without huge budgets, could go toe-to-toe with full factory teams. The RC30 democratized winning. That was revolutionary. The RC30 rewrote the rulebook. It was the first true World Superbike homologation special, and it set a standard so high that it forced every other manufacturer to completely rethink their entire approach. And that is where its success became a problem. Because the rivals could not ignore it. To beat the RC30, they had to match it. Yamaha responded with the exotic FZR750R, the OW01, its own hand-built, race-bred homologation special based on its factory racer. The arms race had begun. Kawasaki followed with its own hardcore homologation ninjas. Suzuki built race-focused GSXR specials. Every Japanese manufacturer was now forced to build increasingly extreme, increasingly expensive machines, all because Honda had raised the bar so impossibly high. And it wasn't just the Japanese. In Italy, Ducati was forced to respond, escalating its own program, the 851, and later, the legendary 916. Many argue we may never have gotten those iconic Ducatis without the RC30 raising the bar first. Think about that. The RC30 was so good, so dominant, that it single-handedly ignited an arms race across the entire motorcycle industry. Every rival now had to build a road-legal factory racer just to have a chance. And that changed everything. In one sense, this was glorious. It gave the world a golden age of incredible exotic superbikes. the OW01, the 916, and more. Some of the greatest motorcycles ever made were born from the fire the RC30 had lit. It elevated everyone. But in another sense, it planted the seeds of destruction, because each new homologation special was more exotic, more expensive, and more removed from ordinary road bikes than the last. The costs spiraled higher and higher, out of all control. This golden age of homologation specials was thrilling, but it was also unsustainable. Manufacturers were spending fortunes building tiny numbers of ultra-expensive bikes sold at a loss just to go racing. Something eventually had to give. And the rules themselves were part of the problem. World Superbike allowed Ducati's V-twins a bigger engine than the four-cylinder bikes. Over time, that advantage grew, and the Japanese fours, the RC30's descendants, found it harder and harder to win. By 1994, the RC30 was showing its age, and Honda needed a new weapon. They built its successor, the RC45, even more exotic, with fuel injection and yet more racing technology. On paper, it should have been even better, but it faced an impossible task, because the RC45 had to live up to the RC30's legend, and it couldn't. It was more expensive still, twice the price of Honda's own Fireblade, yet it was never as dominant on track. It took years to win even a single World Superbike title. The RC45 was a brilliant machine, but it was also a showroom flop, and for years it was overshadowed and looked down upon. The reason? It had to follow the RC30, and nothing could follow the RC30. The original had been simply too good. This is the paradox at the heart of the story. The RC30 was so perfect, so legendary, that it cast a shadow no successor could escape. Every V4 Honda that came after was measured against it, and every one was found wanting by comparison. Eventually, Honda gave up on the very formula the RC30 had defined. Tired of fighting Ducati's advantage twins with its beloved fours, Honda built its own V-twin, the RC51, and finally won again. The RC30's V4 dynasty had reached its end, and the golden age itself faded. The escalating costs became unsustainable. Rules changed. One by one, the manufacturers stopped building these hyper-exotic, road-legal factory racers and reverted to racing modified mass-production bikes. The era the RC30 created was over. So the RC30 both created a golden age and helped bring about its end. It set a standard so high that chasing it eventually became impossible. It was, in the truest sense, a machine that was too good for its own long-term success. But if the RC30's dominance caused problems for the sport, it did wonders for the bike's own legend. Today, the RC30 is revered as perhaps the ultimate Japanese modern classic, a machine spoken of with genuine reverence and awe. And its value reflects that. A good, road-legal RC30 now sells for tens of thousands. Mint examples command staggering sums, far more than the already high price they cost new. The bike that was expensive in 1988 is now genuinely precious. Part of that value comes from rarity. So many RC30s were raced and crashed that surviving, unmolested road bikes are genuinely scarce. It's estimated only a fraction still exist in original, road-legal condition. Each survivor is a treasure. Collectors and enthusiasts don't just value it for rarity, though. They value it for what it represents. A moment when Honda built a road bike with absolutely no compromise. Pure engineering, pure purpose, pure racing intent. Nothing held back. And ride one, and you feel it immediately. That whining, gear-driven V4, that razor-sharp handling, that sense of holding a genuine factory racer between your knees. Even decades later, the RC30 still feels utterly, thrillingly special. There's a magic and a mystique to it that few motorcycles possess. The looks, the legacy, the engineering, they combine into something that still beguiles anyone who understands what it is. The RC30 is more than a bike. It's an icon. Its influence runs deep. The single-sided swing arm, the race-bred road bike, the no-compromise superbike. The RC30 laid a blueprint that shaped sport bikes for decades to come. Its DNA is in machines being built to this very day. It proved a powerful idea, that a manufacturer could build one street-legal machine capable of winning in Formula One, World Superbike, and endurance racing all at once. One bike to conquer everything. And the RC30 did exactly that. It was the first of a legendary breed. Every exotic homologation special that followed, the OW01, the 916, the ZX7RR, the RC45, owes its existence to the RC30. It didn't just join the golden age of superbikes, it began it. And it forced everyone to raise their game. The RC30 made every rival build better, faster, more advanced machines. For a few glorious years, motorcycling produced some of the finest sport bikes in history, all because one bike set the bar so high. Perhaps that's the RC30's greatest gift. Not just its own brilliance, but the brilliance it demanded from others. It was so good that it made everyone around it better. And in doing so, it defined an entire era of motorcycling. The RC30 is what happens when a company commits totally to a single goal and spares no expense to achieve it. It's engineering without compromise. And that total commitment is exactly why it succeeded so completely, and why nothing could truly follow it. Its very greatness became a burden. The RC45 had to be perfect just to equal it, and even perfect wasn't enough. The legend of the original was simply too large. This is what it means for a machine to be too good for its own success. Even now, when enthusiasts debate the greatest superbikes ever made, the RC30 is always in the conversation. It remains a benchmark, the machine against which all no-compromise road racers are still, quietly, measured. And it's a symbol of a golden age that will never return. An era when manufacturers built road-legal factory racers, regardless of cost, purely for the glory of winning. That era began with the RC30. And, in truth, it ended with it too. Look closely at that gear-driven V4, those titanium internals, that hand-built precision, and you're looking at the peak of a certain philosophy. The belief that a road bike could and should be a genuine racing machine. The RC30 was its ultimate expression. In a way, the RC30 was never really beaten. It was retired. It set a standard so high that the sport itself changed to move beyond it. That's not failure. That's a legend so powerful it reshaped everything that came after it. Today, it stands as one of the most desirable, most respected motorcycles ever built. A machine that won everything, inspired everyone, and became more valuable and more beloved with every passing year. Time has only deepened its legend. So, was the RC30 too good for its own success? In every meaningful way, yes. Too good, so it triggered an unsustainable arms race. Too good, so no successor could match it. Too good, so it helped end the very era it created. And too good to ever be forgotten. But unlike some machines, this greatness carries no real regret. The RC30 achieved everything it set out to do, and more. It won its championships, inspired a generation, and secured its place in history. It was too good, and gloriously so. That's the beautiful truth of the RC30. Its only flaw was being too perfect, too far ahead, too complete. It didn't fail by being bad. It failed the sport by being so good that everything else had to change to keep up. A road-legal factory racer. Gear-driven cams and titanium rods. 2 world titles first time out. An arms race, a golden age, and a legend that only grows. All wrapped in one of the most beautiful motorcycles ever created. The Honda RC30 stands as one of the greatest motorcycles ever made, not despite being too good, but precisely because it was. A machine so brilliant it broke the mold, raised the bar, and defined an era all at once. A factory racer for the road, a double world champion, the spark of an arms race, the blueprint for the modern superbike, and a legend no successor could ever match. That is the story of the Honda RC30. That's the real story. The RC30 wasn't too good for its own success. It was too good for the sport around it. It won everything, inspired everything, and outshone everything that followed. Some machines are simply too perfect to ever be surpassed.